VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. I want to say this is a sweet, sweet day to have a Vikings-themed YouTube show like this because these Vikings are 13-2, 2 games away from home field advantage throughout the postseason. A talker that almost seemed far-fetched and laughable about a month ago is here. The Vikings haven't lost a football game since Sam Darnold's face mask was yanked like a bitch at SoFi Stadium. We've come a long way. 8-game winning streak after a 5-game winning streak to start the season with 2 L's sandwiched in the middle after the bye week. And on Sunday, yesterday, the Vikings toppled the Seahawks by 3 points in a game that was just dripping with playoff atmosphere. I'm sure you felt it. It didn't feel like a normal regular season game. And it's really cool that that demon has been exercised. Before Sunday, the Vikings had lost 5 straight games at Seattle, an 18-year losing streak. In fact, starting in 2012, like the moment Harrison Smith was drafted, the Vikings started losing football games in Seattle like nobody's business. They lost in 2012, 2013, 2018, 2019, and 2020. And it was a little criminal that Harrison Smith couldn't play because of a foot injury, but his team won nevertheless, and his direct replacement for the game, Theo Jackson, sealed the deal with a game-winning interception, which was pretty poetic and badass. The good news for Harrison Smith is that he should be back for Vikings-Packers, which is not for all the marbles, but it's pretty damn close this Sunday, along with Ivan Pace, who is eligible to come off of injured reserve, and it sounds like he'll be back. So before I jump into the 5 key takeaways, about that Vikings dub over the Seahawks, I want to mention, and this is something I asked for during the offseason. We do some of our late night Saturday shows. I remember one in particular with Sean Kinner. I asked him what he would need to see from the Vikings, whether it's with J.J. McCarthy or Kevin O'Connell, to know that things are trending in the right direction. And the thing that I have always wanted to see is, when the schedule comes out in May, and you're a Viking fan, even when you have pretty lofty expectations, like in a Super Bowl or bust year, you look at the schedule and you see, they're at Seattle at 3:05 p.m. on December 22nd. Or, they're playing the Ravens in prime time at Baltimore Sunday Night Football, whatever year you want to pick. Usually, you look at that as a Vikings fan, you say, they ain't winning that game. Like, 7, 8, 9 months in advance, you just know going on the road on grass, and it's not a noon game, the Vikings are probably going to lose it. That mentality is vanquished. I don't feel that way anymore. Going into Seattle yesterday, I expected the Vikings to win, and they did. I don't fear going on the road to primetime games. I don't have any, derived for almost 3 decades of fandom and sample. Usually I can identify a game on the schedule no matter who's on the roster and say the Vikings aren't winning that bitch because they never win games like that. That thinking is done. It's retired, at least for now. You don't have to expect bad shit to happen from the Vikings just because they've done that throughout your lifetime and your fandom. And I think that is a huge point of order for where Kevin O'Connell has this football team right now. So props to him, props to the Vikings, who just keep on winning. So let's jump into these 5 takeaways from this matchup. I'm going to rank them. When we get to number 1, it's the most important. So at number 5, at the bottom of the list of key takeaways, still important, but not quite when we get to number 1, is the special teams majesty that we saw against the Seahawks. A lot of folks don't care about special teams. If you're a casual fan, I get it. That's fine. But yesterday, punter Ryan Wright punted 6 times for 300 yards. He had an average of 50 yards per punt. If he had a single 50-yard punt, it would have been pretty sweet. But he did it consistently. 4 of his 6 punts landed inside the Seahawks' 20-yard line. They had to start at the other end of the field. And in a game that was only decided by 3 points, that shit's really vital. And so for the Vikings to have the juice in the punting game, to do really, really well in a pressure-cooked game is a big damn deal. And then it wasn't just Ryan Wright. It was Will Reichard. What was it, week 9? He injured his quad. Or was it a little bit... It was against the Colts. And let's see, that would have been... week 9. And he missed a couple field goals that game, and then he missed one, what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago. He was perfect yesterday, and just like the Ryan Wright talker from a few seconds ago, he needed to be perfect in a game that close, especially when it had that aforementioned playoff vibe. So in addition to having this confidence, hey, the Vikings have to go on the road in Seattle at 3 p.m., or hey, they have to go play some team with a winning record in prime time on Sunday Night Football, they're not going to win. we can also begin to deconstruct all of our negative connotation that we have with kickers. Will Reichert deserves that from you. Now, you're always in the very back of your mind, always going to be like, especially in the postseason, oh, this guy's going to miss, isn't he? But Will Reichert has shown you that you don't need to feel that way. You don't need to have those same butterflies in your stomach. So in a game this tight that was decided by 3 games, it's not that special teams had to be perfect, but they were close to it. Number 4 is Dallas Turner's arrival. There are a lot of folks in Vikings social media, Vikings Twitter, that bitch about Dallas Turner not getting enough playing time. To an extent, I understand the grievance. You trade the mini version of the farm for an edge rusher. You want the guy to play. But if you want Dallas Turner to get like Jared Verse-like snaps for the Rams, you're going to have to bench Andrew Van Ginkel or bench Jonathan Grenard, and that would be malpractice. So in the spots where Dallas Turner is ramping up and getting into games, every time the Vikings call on him, he makes a sweet play. Last week, it was the sack on Caleb Williams where he fell to the ground, popped back up like a ghost, and got Caleb Williams. And then this week, he had the interception in the first half. And it was the first interception by a Vikings rookie defensive lineman in 21 years. The last guy was Kevin Williams. So the continued emergence to stardom by Dallas Turner in back-to-back weeks. He even had the sweet quarterback hit on Kirk Cousins 3 weeks ago. So every week, even while playing like 15, 20, 25 snaps, which is about 1/3 of the time, there is a single Dallas Turner moment that is really damn crucial. And this one in particular, because it started to swing the turnover battle in the right direction. So I don't even think you need to have patience with Dallas Turner. You just need to know that when he has 2 Pro Bowl caliber edge rushers taking all of his snaps, it's going to take a little bit longer than most would like for him to be acclimated to a full-time low. I don't think Patrick Jones will be on the 2025 Vikings. Maybe I'm wrong. But if he's gone, boom, there come your increased Dallas Turner snaps, and the guy is 21 years old. So any comparisons to like Jared Verse, who's a fully finished product at the age of 24, those are just a little bit silly. The Vikings don't need Dallas Turner to be a starter right now because they already have their starters at home in Van Ginkel and Grenard. But the 4th takeaway is Dallas Turner, when he gets in the game, he does really sweet stuff. Number 3, we were waiting for 3.5 months on the Justin Jefferson breakout game. It is not that he struggled one iota through the first, 14 games of the season. It's that he didn't have his signature badass performance where he thumps the other team for 150 yards and a touchdown or 2. In this very tight game, in a hostile environment, Jefferson tabulated 10 receptions for 144 yards and the game-winning touchdown. This is why the guy is the highest paid receiver in football for games like this. So in a spot where the running game was somewhat effective to start the game, especially that first drive, which was a beautiful first drive, scripted in the heavens, you needed to have the standout moment from the guy you pay, $35 million or whatever it is per season, and Jefferson delivered. Especially, we learned after the game that when there was 4 minutes left in the game, so the final 2 or 3 plays on offense, I guess Sam Darnold and Kevin O'Connell's communication just went poof. They could no longer talk about which play they were going to run. So Darnold had to just kind of, lean on his mastery of the offense and tell Jefferson on the final offensive, the game-winning go-ahead score, just go deep and I'll hit you. So for Jefferson to come up with his biggest 2024 performance on the road, Week 16, home field advantage within reach. He's a superstar, and this is why the guy does what he does and makes as much money, is because he is dependable as all hell. Number 2, and this is kind of a carryover from this is a good carryover from the last month, is I'm not kidding. Every time the Vikings say to Sam Darnold in overtime, or in overtime against the Bears at Soldier Field back in November, or this game, or against the Cardinals, every time the Vikings say, all right, Sam, go win us the game. We're paying you $10 million to do this. Every time he's called upon, he delivers in pressure-cooked clutch situations. Now, we spent a lot of the time in the season's first month and a half, 2 months, wondering, is Darnold's MVP pace sustainable? And that was a fair talker because the guy has never been this good. You can totally get rid of your anxieties, apprehension, your hesitance to jump in on the Darnold experience. The guy is just plain good when he plays for the Vikings. And it almost to me feels like this perk that I didn't see coming, that he's also damn good in the fourth quarter in overtime. you can give him the ball like at Seattle and say, here's what we need, and he goes and gets it. The only time that he was stifled was when his face mask was grabbed against the Rams and that drive ended and the Vikings lost by 10. But other than that, every time in a close game, fourth quarter and then overtime at Soldier Field, we're like, all right, Darnold's going to have to go do this. Each and every time the guy goes and wins the football game for the Vikings. So it's a really unexpected, sweet facet of this season, and it is the reason that if you're continuing your Super Bowl daydreams, the Vikings have the quarterback. He's shown in those moments to deliver, and we already know the defense is Super Bowl caliber because it forces so many takeaways. It's time to get relatively excited, especially if the Vikings beat the Packers, and then it's going to be for all the marbles against the Lions. My goodness, that'll be a week if we get there. All right, the final, biggest, primary takeaway of Vikings, their win over the Seahawks, is home field advantage is absolutely in reach. I can tell you that I do this almost every season for the Vikings, and that is in early December. The team's chilling at about 7-7, or maybe 7-6. And I have to go figure out who the Vikings need to lose and what they need to win. How many games out of the next 5 do the Vikings have to win? How many games do the Cardinals and 49ers have to lose for the Vikings to get in? We don't have any of those wacky scenarios. It's right in front of them to go get home field advantage and play every eligible game at US Bank Stadium. Nobody thought the team would win 8 games after losing to the Rams in week 8. Not a single person was like, yep, we're going to go on a heater. But because they went on that very heater, they have a home game against their most hated foe, and then they play against the Lions, who have the same record, that are suddenly mortal because like 1/3 of their starting offense, starting defense is on injured reserve. So we've come a long way this season from daydreaming about, hey, maybe this 5-0 start is sustainable. I bet you they're going to get a wild card matchup, to thinking a wild card matchup would be disappointing now. That is how far we've got within this Vikings experience. And although the opponents are daunting, the Packers, I'm sure that's going to be a hellscape of a game, whether it's tight, I can't foresee anything that's other than a one-score game. But if you can win at home and then take the best version of yourself to Detroit and win that game, then the road to the Super Bowl goes through US Bank Stadium, and the Vikings would just need 2 home playoff wins to get there. And they have not gotten to a Super Bowl in my lifetime, certainly, but I think it's, since 1976? So it's really fantastic that for home field advantage to occur. We don't need the Eagles to go lose to the Cowboys or Giants. We don't need another Lions loss to the 49ers. The only reason that those talkers would come and play is if the Vikings lose to the Packers. Then they would need help from the 49ers beating the Lions and then the Eagles losing a game to the Cowboys or Giants. But home field advantage could have been stripped away if the Seahawks beat the Vikings, because the parlay to get there would have been really convoluted. But it is so straightforward for the team that was supposed to win 6 or 7 games back in late August, early September. They've doubled that. They've won 13. And all they have to do is beat 2 of their most hated division rivals to secure home field advantage. It is hard to believe we are even talking about that as a possibility and then even buying into it, being realistic. That's how far we've come. All right, I don't think I'll be chatting with you guys before Christmas, so have a Merry Christmas. We'll be back later this week, Thursday or Friday, getting you ready for Packer Week. And, we'll see if they can pull this damn thing off. Skol, baby.